Ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to what is a most auspicious event bringing us to part of our close this afternoon. My name is Victor Ladukun, and I'm the Director of Communication at the African Development Bank. A warm welcome to you once again for this session, Unveiling the Boardroom discussions, which I know and believe a whole lot of you are looking forward to participating in, hearing what the results are. As the saying goes, the taste of the pudding many times is in the eating. So without further ado, at this point, I would like to call on somebody who's labored many times behind the scenes, making today possible on multiple fronts. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the podium the Senior Director of the African Investment Forum, Ms. Stella Kilonzo, for brief remarks.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and honor to be here. I wish to acknowledge our president, the premier, the ministers, everyone who's present here, our directors, the governors of the bank, my colleagues at the African Development Bank, our partners who have again been amazing. It's a pleasure to be here today and to really talk about the Africa Investment Forum. We started this process at the end of March, really, or beginning of April. We started the process by getting our board to, again, endorse the actual way that we will undertake this work. This has been great, and from there we agreed on several avenues of ensuring that we execute this. We first started off with a zero pipeline. That meant that we needed to create a pipeline for the Africa Investment Forum. This pipeline development focused on what we have within the bank that can actually be placed on the Africa Investment Forum platform, as well as what can actually be feasible in November. We started with a date in mind, November 7th to 9th, which was really critical for us. So going forward, the pipeline, we also realized that we needed to have partners. Who else would we approach? So this process of having partners has been ongoing. We started off explaining to the partners, again, knowing that there has been a lot of partnerships that have been going on, but again, with our president's guidance, it was more of focusing on execution, more of focusing on actual getting the products and the pipeline ready. So it was critical for us to make sure that we also express that to the partners, that it's not just going to be easy, but we actually have all to start working from now on. I'm glad to report that the partners that you see here have come on board. You had the meeting yesterday and as well as on the 7th, where you've seen our partners. They were able to appoint focal points that we could work very closely with. So we now dealt with that part, which is a tranche, which is the pipeline development. At the same time, we also focused on project preparation. As you're aware, one of the issues with Africa has been the death of bankable projects. That was important for us to say, what do we need to do to make sure these projects are bankable? We realized, again, there were so many project preparation facilities, about 52, and out of those, each of them had their own methodology of approaching project preparation. So what we agreed on is that since the bank hosts the NEPAD IPPF, we worked very closely with the NEPAD IPPF, which is under our infrastructure partnerships under the infrastructure complex, to make sure that we reach out to the rest of the other consortia and actually try and see whether we can come up with a standardized way of project preparation. This work is ongoing, and it's actually going to be the work that will form our Q1 2019 projects, to really just get, a federation of project preparation, standardize how we undertake this so that we can make sure that the projects are well prepared. One of the findings from this session when we engage the institutional investors is that we always bring them at the end when the projects are prepared, but all of them are very keen. All the institutional investors we met here, as well as the pension fund, said we want to be involved right from the beginning because we all have our ways of undertaking due diligence. We all have our investment policies and guidelines. If they can actually be factored in when you're preparing the project, then it's easy for us. All we have to do then is take it to the investment committee. So that's one of the lessons that we have learned as well from the interactions we have had here. And we will also take forward that and actually include the institutional investors in our project preparation workstream. Then the third area for us is about policy. You've had, yesterday, we've had the presidential chats, we've had the engagement with the Honorable, His Excellencies, the President, Cyril Ramaphosa, as well as the other presidents. The biggest issue has been how do we make sure that the policy is enabling the regulations as well as the legal framework. A lot of work has gone into this, and it's about harmonizing, even if we can start in Africa by harmonizing from a regional perspective rather than focusing on the whole of Africa being harmonized. I think we have a fine example where we live in Cote d'Ivoire. The West African Monetary Union is totally harmonized in terms of currency as well as regulation. The legal regulations are the OHADA laws. And so it has been very good from that perspective. From a capital markets perspective, it has been amazing in terms of products, in terms of the interventions that we are able to undertake. So that's how we want to also undertake the policy and legal framework that we are working. Our partner in this has been the Compact with Africa because they already had certain 101 reforms that had already been undertaken. So it was basically for us someone we could work with. They expressed their interest and excitement in the Africa Investment Forum right from the beginning in March. So we worked with them very closely, as well as with all the governments who are here. I wish to also note that we also found a very good model in Nigeria, which is it's called ENRP, which is basically the enabling. I know we keep calling it like that, but it's really an area where they looked at what are the bottlenecks that were in each of the projects, and they worked and set up an interministerial committee, also working with the private sector. Out of these projects, they identified projects that had a bottleneck, and the government, through the office of the president and the vice president, actually came together and unlocked some of those bottlenecks, and we have that fine example, which we did when we were there in July 2018. We were able to see these projects and actually take them forward. So some of these projects are the ones that will be unveiled today in this boardroom. The other area for us has been de-risking. How do we ensure that we de-risk the projects, especially in the area of housing, construction? I think we've also undertaken that recently in the solar energy. A lot has been required, even in the SME sector, looking at the whole aspect of de-risking so that you ensure that the investor ultimately is able to look at the project on its own merit without thinking about the additional risks that are there that would actually compromise the risk return of that particular project. So from that perspective, again, we've worked very closely as a bank and under the guidance of our president, as well as our finance vice president, we have been able to come up with a co-guarantee platform. And as you recall, at this conference, there is a co-guarantee memorandum of understanding that has been signed with partners, the Africa Trade Insurance, the private sector group of the UK, which is basically the guarantor, our own institution, Africa Development Bank, as well as the Islamic Development Bank insurance arm. So that has been amazing, and that really takes forward the whole aspect of co-guarantee. We will request other insurance companies. We will request additional insurance companies as well as development finance institutions to come on board on the core guarantee platform. Then the other aspect which of our work stream has really been focusing on the investor mobilization. We have had extensive engagements with investors both in Africa, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, as well as global investors. And when you look at the numbers of investors who are here, I had the opportunity of attending the institutional investor workstream. The room was full of a capacity of at least over 100 or so of institutional investors. When we looked at our registration database, the investors are actually over 350 that came here, a lot with trillions, comprising hedge funds, comprising private equity, comprising pension funds, as well as sovereign wealth funds, including Temasek was also represented here. So from our perspective, this is really what Dr. Adesina has been speaking about, tilting the flow of capital so that 1% even of the 131 trillion that is available globally and assets under management is able to just invest in African projects, which are obviously ranging from infrastructure all the way to social sector. So it's my pleasure really to say thank you, and I wish to really acknowledge my team. I have a small, nimble team that has been so effective, and I'm really, really proud of them. And I would wish to, if you don't mind, Mr. President, to just call them on stage so that we can share the glory. So we have Ezekiel, Patrick, Kola, Ebi. Ebi is our senior advisor. Neymar. And I don't know. And we also have Karine, but she's again another in the back office, so she might not be here. It would have been great, but maybe we'll bring her. So, and I'm looking for Ebi, please. Ebi is our senior advisor. He has really been amazing. And
Thank you very much, Stella, for your remarks. Greatly appreciated. Thank you again. Wonderful job. Round of applause one more time. Just before we go on to our next segment, I'd like to invite our panelists to the platform, and we're going to start with Mr. Frank Nweke, if he's in the house. I believe he is. Followed by Jack van der Merwe. Please come to the platform. Solomon Asamoah, Basil Elbaz, and Tahani Maloli. Well, I believe that we're in for a treat. But before we get to our panelists, I'd like to quickly invite to the podium Ezekiel Odiogo, who is the head of private investment at the African Investment Forum, to come give us a few stats on some of the deals that have already been concluded, and then we'll come to the panel to talk about a lot of the deals that are still approaching closure and almost there. So Ezekiel Odiogo, kindly come to the platform.
Thank you very much, Victor. Our President, the Premier, and allow me to stand on existing protocol. Now, we're all here because the African Investment Forum is a different forum. It's about transactions and away from the talking, but actually doing the deals and moving them to financial closure. So for this year, African Investment Forum 2018, we have had robust conversations, with governments, the private sector, investors, whether they're coming from DFIs or the pension funds, institutional investors or asset managers, the sovereign wealth funds, and also the private sector as well, like I mentioned. And let me not leave out the commercial banks. During this African Investment Forum 2018, we have had 61 robust investment conversations at the boardroom. I'm sure when you walk around the corridor, you're wondering why people are going into dark rooms. They're actually discussing and closing deals or advancing them to financial closure. So we've had these 61 transactions worth over 40.4 billion US dollars. And as at this morning, we've actually secured investment interests for about 45 deals that are worth over $32 billion. And this is the magic of the African Investment Forum. I think it's about changing the conversation, moving away from talking about the problems, but actually getting the solutions done. So I want to thank our President for the vision and also for the leadership that he has provided to actually be the optimist in chief for Africa in terms of closing our infrastructure deficit. Thank you very much, Mr. President. It's not so much about the deals themselves, but it's also about the diversity of where they're coming from. We're looking at energy, we're looking at transport, we're looking at industry, agriculture, ICT, but also areas that you would hardly think that you have investors looking at. So whether they're health, education, hospitality and tourism, aviation, and even housing. And we have actually the pleasure of having someone in the housing sector who will speak for, on the panel. So as my director mentioned before, we've actually been able to attract, in terms of participation, 350 investors, cutting across all different classes of investors. So looking at DFIs, the commercial banks, institutional investors like the sovereign wealth fund, pension funds, and also looking at asset managers as well. But these investors have actually come from 53 countries, not just in Africa, but even outside Africa. And I think that's the beauty of what we do at the African Investment Forum. They have come from far and wide, from the United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, France, United States, India, Japan, China, Switzerland, Argentina, Austria, Canada, Germany, South Korea, Portugal, and even Malta. But let's not leave our continent as well. So for Africa, we've actually had 12, countries with the 12 largest delegation that have actually participated at the African Investment Forum 2018. These are coming from South Africa, Nigeria, Ghana, Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Angola, Egypt, Tunisia, Morocco, Gabon, Mauritius, and Mozambique. I want to thank them very much for their engagement. Before I finish, let me just give you some highlights in terms of some of the major signings that we had during the African Investment Forum 2018. In the boardroom deals, which we are privileged to have one of the panelists one of the panelists on the floor today, is the Accra Air Sky rail system. or SkyTrain, sorry. And this deal actually is worth $2.6 billion, was closed and led by the president himself, His Excellency Nana Akufo-Addo. So when you have the president talking about investment, you know that all roadblocks will be cleared and these investments will happen. And this is really what the African Investment Forum, the differentiating factor that we bring to the table. But we've also had other deals and other signings as well. About $400 million cooperation agreement between African 50 and the government of Rwanda was signed for the Kigali Innovation City at the African Investment Forum 2018. In addition to that, we've also had $800 million deal agreement signed among the African Development Bank, the Africa 50, the governments of the Democratic Republic of Congo, and the Republic of Congo itself to develop and finance the first road rail bridge project linking both capitals. This is really, really a landmark project. So I want to thank you so much for your engagement during the African Investment Forum 2018. We have been hearing several sound bites. I mean, I can read some of them to you. I mean, from Mr. Ronald Nkuzi, the Director for External Finance Division for the Ministry of Finance, Rwanda. This is what he has to say. The African Investment Forum is a game changer. That is what we need for Africa. Enough of the talking, let us do deals. We also have from the President himself, this is an urgent need for such infrastructure investment across the continent. So let me end here by saying thank you very much for your participation at the African Investment Forum 2018. Thank you very much for your capacity to engage on the transactions, for visiting the boardrooms and actually putting your mouth or putting your money where your mouth is. And thank you very much and look forward to seeing you at the African Investment Forum 2019. Thank you.
Ezekiel Adogu, thank you very much. Well, as we said earlier, the taste of the pudding is in the eating. And joining us on the platform today is a cross-section of leading investors who can tell you what that experience has been today. When we started this journey a couple of days ago, one of the things that we have reiterated over and over again is that this is not about aid, but investments. We've talked about the African Investment Forum being about transactions, transactions, and transactions. The bottom line is this: the African Investment Forum is really about re-engineering history and preparing the continent for future generations through investment and doing investments differently. And I think from what we've heard so far, we've come a long way in this evolution of how we're going to be doing business moving forward. I do want to apologize to my dear brother, Akeem Dauda, who joined us just a few moments ago. Kindly accept my apology for leaving you out earlier. Let me just quickly run through our panelists once again and provide a little bit of history about what it is that they do have on the table. To my immediate left, Frank Nweke, who represents the Brass Fertilizer and Petrochemical Project, a $3.3 billion project that is approaching closure right here at the African Investment Forum. Please give him a warm welcome. Representing the Gauteng Rail Infrastructure Project, Mr. Jack van der Merwe. Again, that's a project that's worth $3.7 billion approaching closure here at the African Investment Forum. Welcome to the platform. Representing the Accra SkyTrain project, a $2.6 billion project, Mr. Solomon Asamoah. Thank you very much for joining us. Akeem Dauda, representing the Ngulmenjem Hydropower Plant and the NTOUM Intum 7 Water Treatment Plant, both projects worth $301 million for the hydropower plant and $225 million for the water treatment plant, representing a cumulative total of $500 million approaching closing. And representing the Tahir Petrochemical Plant and Port, Mr. Basile El Baz. Thank you very much. Again, your project is worth $10.9 billion. Congratulations. Approaching closure. And finally, last but not the least, Mr. Tahane Makhlole, representing IHS Kenya Affordable Housing Fund, a $250 million project. Welcome to the platform. Gentlemen, I want us to start very, very quickly. We have very limited time here, and I want us to accelerate our discussion this afternoon. First of all, by telling us, just in sequential order, moving from Frank and making our way to Mr. Elbaz all the way at the end, what your overall experience has been at the African Investment Forum and what you think the impact of the forum has been on your business as well as your boardroom experience. For many who were here who were not able to come into the boardroom sessions, what has it been like? Frank?
Well, well, thanks, Victor. And I want to commend the president of the bank and his entire team for an excellent job. And you know, as I made my way here, I was just reflecting on this session. And I want to say, Mr. President, that if this forum had held as recent as, say, 3-4 years ago, perhaps by now we would have closed this deal. And more importantly, something that might sound like a bit of humor, perhaps our medical expenses, you know, bills on antihypertensives and the rest of them would have gone down considerably. But, you know, just the opportunity to be in a boardroom session at a forum such as this has just been transformative. Because in the last, say, 5 years that we've been on this deal, we've visited at least 25 countries, engaging investors, trying to get people interested, trying to mobilize the finances. But just to sit at the African Investment Forum, and the African Development Bank has done all the work and brought everyone under the same roof, is nothing short of transformative. So, and you know, it's just the vision and the fact that from the time we visited you in Côte d'Ivoire, I think in October last year to this time, and the fact that you've been able to string this together just shows clearly what is possible on the continent when you have the right leaderships at various levels, be it development finance institutions, be it even at the country-level governments. Because furthermore, the government of Nigeria has been extremely supportive. The Economic Growth and Recovery Plan, which was put in place, and who organized the Focus Labs in Nigeria, to which Brass Fertilizer team was invited, and after which the project was rated 4 out of 5 star. They've been extremely supportive, following us wherever we needed to go, issuing whatever letters needed to be issued. And so be it the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Budget and National Planning, the Ministry of Justice, they've been extremely supportive. So just the combination of the vision, the personnel, and then the implementers. I mean, listening to Stella, I remember when we sent that mail just a few hours to, you know, we were never sure we could make it here. And we said there were visa issues. In just 3 minutes of that mail going out, the president had come back, Stella had come back, Ezekiel had come back. Frank, you guys need to get here. The South African High Commission was calling, please, wherever you are, come here. Fortunately, we were able to get it, you know, just to come here. So thank you so much. The boardroom experience was excellent, just fantastic. And we're fairly certain that in the coming weeks, hopefully we should be able to mobilize the balance of $200 million in equity that we seek, and which is the main reason that we came here. So thank you very much to the bank, and thank you to the entire investors.
Thank you very much, Frank. Jack?
When I started Gautrain 1 in 2000, there was nothing like this. We were trying to convince the world that we have a greenfields project that will work. It's now history, it is working, so having a forum like this where you can come and say, Gautrain 1 has got its successes, we'd like to extend it, and this puts all the knowledgeable people in the room, and from our boardroom session, I think it worked very well, and I think if we had this in 2000, we would have had the Gautrain much earlier. But thank you.
Thank you, Jack. Over to you, Solomon.
Thank you very much. I have a very unique perspective on this because I was at the African Development Bank working when President Adesina first mentioned this a few years ago. It was an idea. And to see that it's come to fruition, I think the President and his team has to be really, really commended. It's exceptional. It's really, really good what's come out here. And I've been asking myself, what is it that feels a bit different? I've been doing these tours for quite a while. It feels very African. It feels like Africa is the focus. And it also feels very business-minded. It's almost like everybody's here for a purpose. My president, President Akufo-Addo from Ghana, says he's a man in a hurry. Ghana is a country in a hurry. You get the sense from people around here that everybody's in a hurry to close a transaction and make an impact. And I think that feel is something that's been captured here, and I think it's fantastic. On my particular project that we did, the Accra SkyTrain project, light railway system for Accra, we identified a real need, congestion in capital cities in Africa. We have a joint venture between the South African consortium and a Ghanaian consortium, which is why in our boardroom session, it was fantastic, as well as the president of Ghana being there and the Minister of Railways for Ghana. We were blessed by Madam Zuma's presence here, and the Premier of Gauteng also came to our session, just to stamp the intra-Africa cooperation. So we firmly believe that this forum gave us the excellent platform for us to introduce this project to potential investors and financiers, and we hope everybody will get on board with the SkyTrain. Thank you.
Thank you, Solomon. Over to you, Akim.
In May, Stella came to Gabon because we were holding a Sovereign Wealth Fund Investment Forum in Gabon, and she told us about this initiative, and she told us that it will be really transaction-oriented. And I'd like to say that the event held to its promise. We held a boardroom session yesterday, showcasing 2 projects, one hydro dam project and a water treatment project. Project that really will transform the face of our economy and impact life sustainably. And we're quite satisfied because it was really the opportunity to kill multiple birds with one stone. We had around the table DFIs. The discussion was facilitated by the AFDB, which make it really conducive and really an atmosphere of trust and confidence. And our takeaway is we're quite confident that in the next 2 weeks we'll sign an MLA contract with the FDB for for raising the debt element of the project, and we also have strong commitment from 2 investors that will send a team to do the due diligence in the next 2 months.
Thank you, Akim. And Tahani, over to you.
Thanks, Victor. I absolutely share the sentiments of my fellow panelists here. We've actually found the African Investment Forum to be actually quite a good platform in order for you to actually get a good level of access to meet people that can actually transform the message and the strategy that we actually have as a company into something quite meaningful. We were actually initially in contact with Ezekiel, and from the point that we actually spoke to him, we got the sense that he actually understood the investment strategy of the fund and the fact that it actually has a very strong alignment to and
have not commended the quality of project preparation. Now, Brass Fertilizer and Petrochemical Project is very unique in several respects for Nigeria and for the continent. First of all, it has the potential to create about 100,000 jobs over the next 10 years. During the construction phase, it's 15,000 jobs. Post-construction, it is 5,000 permanent jobs. There's a brand new city called the Brass Oil and Gas City that has been created by the government of Nigeria. It's been designated an export-free zone because of the quality of this project. And we're going to be creating, transforming these communities. In fact, today, there's no other project of this size that has the potential to really transform the livelihoods of the community in which it is going to be located. There's no other project that has the potential to create the number of jobs we're about to create. We're also going to be, a very important part of this project, of course, is the fact that independent power is also going to be generated. Up till this moment, Nigeria imports almost 100% of all the fertilizer that it consumes. Of course, some of it is provided by some of our compatriots in Notere, in Indorama, but there's still enough room for brass fertilizer project. And so Nigeria spends, I think, from the time the president of the bank was Minister of Agriculture, he was clear that it was not a sustainable arrangement for Nigeria to import all the fertilizer it needed. And I think annually, the government of Nigeria was spending at least $4 billion in fertilizer importation. But I believe that with the brass fertilizer coming on stream and the ones that are already there, all of this is going to be, are going to be in the past, with the country becoming sustainable in fertilizer production. And of course, this has tremendous impact on food security. As you know, we have a large population, 200 million people, and over $40 billion worth of food is imported into Nigeria every year. And so we believe that this project also is going to help to cut some of that cost.
Thank you very much, Frank. Jack?
If one looks at infrastructure, like a conference like this, you usually have politicians, financiers, and engineers. But I think we must broaden it to bring in the soft issues. We have to bring in the environmentalists, the sociologists, and that. So we have to look at it wider, because in South Africa, we have to create jobs. We have to create the change. And in Gautrain 1, we achieved it, and we are going to achieve it with Gautrain 2 by having a much wider, usually PPPs look at technical, financial, and legal. We have what we call a socio-economic development side, and that's the side that we need to nurture and develop. Engineering is easy. It's the soft issues that are more difficult. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jack.
Thank
Solomon?
you. So what advice would I give for 2019? I would say to anybody thinking of coming in 2019, come prepared, and come prepared to unlock capital, because capital is in the room. I think the willingness of investors and finance here to put money into projects is higher than I've ever seen anywhere else. So just make sure you're prepared. The second thing I would say about our impact of our particular project on the people of Ghana, it's going to be huge. As everybody knows, every capital city in Africa is becoming more and more congested. Accra is no different. It's a beautiful city, but traveling from distance is becoming harder and harder because of the cars. We need mass transit systems. We need ways in which we can move large numbers of people and they can leave their cars at home. The How train is a good forerunner of that, but we need that impact in Accra. So where do we go to find the solution? Well, we're using Brazilian technology, we're using South African technical expertise and financing, and we're using Ghana local knowledge and investment as well. I think a combination like that is something that you can get in a forum like this. And so the meeting of so many different types of people from different angles is really what is the strength of this conference.
Thank you very much. Hakeem?
Thank you, Victor. I believe one of the comments I could give here is to really encourage the AFDB to continue giving support to the sponsors and the countries during the development phase. And for this, I would like also to give credit to the Africa Development Group for the African Legal Support Facility, which has been really critical in accelerating the discussion we've been having with the government. And such instruments that have been put in place have been really, how do you say it, accelerate the discussion and move the project toward a financial close. As far as the impact of the project that we've presented, we're talking about a water treatment station, 140,000 cubic meter, that will provide drinkable water to more than 610,000 people. I remember hearing the President Adesina saying during a forum that Africans are tired of being in the dark. That's true, and that should change, but we can manage being in the dark 2 days. But can you believe a city that doesn't have water for 2 days? So as far as impact, we believe this country, this investment will definitely impact the lives of many people in Gabon. And regarding the energy project, it's a 75 megawatt power plant, hydropower plant, to provide electricity to the city of Libreville. And that power plant will provide electricity to more than 400,000 households.
Thank you very much, Hakeem. Hani?
Sure. I actually have to agree that I think preparation for this would actually be one of the most critical things. It took us just over a year in order for us to actually have understood the Kenyan market. We're actually a South African private equity firm that's managed to actually deliver over 21,000 units in South Africa. And we've sort of started to move into the different African regions. So far, we've moved into Namibia and into Botswana. But then the one thing that people need to actually appreciate is that African countries are not necessarily monolithic, and that there are unique solutions to the various regions. The fundamentals across are pretty much very similar. The rate of urbanization that is actually occurring across African countries is starting to put huge pressure on urban infrastructure, and from our experiences, particularly in the housing market, where you find that people at the bottom of the pyramid are not necessarily being catered for. So it would be quite critical to actually understand the regulatory framework and to actually get an in-depth understanding of the development framework to try and align yourself with where the private sector actually needs to participate, and more importantly, what the key sort of critical areas that the different governments have actually identified. In the instance of Kenya, $250 million will effectively lead to about 10,000 units being developed in Kenya, and that'll be over an investment period of about 3 years. Now, the demand in that country is far greater than that. We are merely going to have a relatively smaller impact in that market, but then the thing is, the opportunity does exist for new players to actually come in. And it's not just in housing, it's in healthcare, it's in education, it's in food security. So I think it's quite critical for people to actually take the time to understand the different markets that they would like to move into, and not necessarily rush the process, but in a sense, accelerate the various discussions that they would like to have by engaging with key players in each particular market.
Thank you very much, Tahani. Last but certainly not the least, Basil.
Yes, thank you. So I guess for the 2019 forum, and what I'd like to do is to split this into two parts. My first piece of advice is going to be for the organizers. Do not change a thing. Because sometimes you have something that's working so well that you can't stop yourself from putting your fingers in it. Don't do a thing. This is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. For the attendees, and for someone who's looking to present a project, do not come to the conference cold. And I'm not talking about prepare and do your presentations. I'm talking about take your project and present it on one-on-one basis with certain investors that you are comfortable with. Get their feedback, modify your pitch, amend the story, so that when you come to the forum, you are able to put on the table a very precise and structured transaction that can be very well received. In terms of what is the development impact of our project, and it's somewhat remarkable from our perspective. And so what you look at is during the construction phase, you're going to have about 20,000 jobs, as well as 15,000 indirect jobs. Our construction period is roughly 50 months, give or take. During the operations phase, you're looking at about 3,000 engineers and technicians being employed, and roughly another 25,000 indirect jobs being created. Now, in the early stages, as we're exporting, we will increase Egypt's overall exports by approximately 70%. But as our products start to stay in country and start getting transformed, offsetting imports, we expect within the first 5 years to create an additional 200,000 jobs that would be based upon our products being transformed, and then over a 10-year period to reach a total of 1 million indirect jobs. And this is really what we are doing is all about. How are we going to impact the lives of those in Egypt?
Ladies and gentlemen, our wonderful panelists and investors, Basil Elbaz, Tahani Maklaule, Akeem Dowda, Solomon Asamoah, Jacques van der Merwe, and Frank Nweke. Ladies and gentlemen, please give them a warm, warm round of applause. You know, one of the things about history is many times it's very easy to look back and to critique. I call it halftime quarterbacking. But the thing there is that it takes vision and it takes leadership to create that which never existed before. So just before the president of the African Development Bank comes on stage to provide very brief closing remarks, I just want us to use this opportunity to thank someone in this hall without whose total support for this venture would never have happened. We would not be in this room. I'd like to please have us recognize our wonderful host, Premier Makura. Please give him a warm, warm, wonderful. Sir, if you could please stand to be recognized. Thank you very much. Please be seated. You know, for almost 4,000 years of human history, the movement of people, goods, and services was extremely difficult because the wheel had not been invented. It was actually a square for some reason. We didn't have the technology to shape the wheel. But once the wheel was created, the acceleration of movement of people and goods was quantum. For many years, and actually not too long ago, we all had phones that maximum you could put maybe 100 contacts on, and even then with very limited information. But somebody called Steve Jobs was able to connect the dots and bring different pieces of technology together to create what is the mobile phone today. And it's actually amazing to think that mobile telephony, the way we know it today, is less than 15 years old. How many of you in this room can survive without your mobile phone for even one day? So what a difference one individual can make. This forum is absolutely unprecedented. It's unique. And it is indeed a game changer, as we've heard throughout our sessions today. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to use this opportunity to give us an opportunity to not only recognize, but welcome to the program the Chief Convener of the Africa Investment Forum, the President of the African Development Bank, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina.
Thank you very much, Victor. Merci beaucoup. Please use your headphones. I'm going to speak in French for a while. Are you all set? What channel is French? Channel 1. Or channel 2. Excellence, Monsieur le Premier de Gauteng, mon cher frère Makura, il faut applaudir Monsieur le Premier là. My grandsir, Madame Zuma, Dlamini Zuma. Il n'est pas parmi nous ce soir, mais il y a le grand homme pour l'Afrique. C'est le président Cyril Ramaphosa qui a réuni tout le monde ici avec nous pour cette séance très importante, Forum pour l'investissement en Afrique. Monsieur le Président, I know that you speak French, but I just want to say to you, thank you very much, President Cyril Ramaphosa. Today is an incredible day. It is incredible because, not because I'm standing here. It's incredible not because the African Development Bank even did anything. It's incredible because you are here and you have faith, you have confidence in Africa. That makes it incredible. Africa is bold. If you look very closely at that Africa Investment Forum, please look at it that you see over there. What do you see? You see gold on top of it. But if you look very closely at the top of that, you will see the head of a lion. I will show you. Right over there at the top. Yeah, right here. Oh, where is it? Right, okay, right over there. That means that Africa believes in itself. Africa has come of age, and Africa will project itself as strong, innovative, dynamic, a place to invest in. What did we see at this forum over the last 3 days? We saw partnerships in action. We saw participation all from across the world. We saw commitments to make deals. We saw intense discussions on the deals. We saw resounding confidence in Africa, and we saw successful deals. I could not be much happier today than to see how our collective effort led to the closure of 45 deals worth $32 billion. This is a remarkable achievement, an outcome that is incredible for a first Africa Investment Forum. My board of directors are here because we couldn't even move unless they actually had confidence that this was going to happen. I'm sure they took a big risk, but I'm sure they see the high return on that risk. If my board of directors can stand and thank them, because without them, we won't be doing this. Thank you for having confidence in us. It's scary sometimes. I was talking to President Jin of the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. He said there is a Chinese proverb that says, you cannot learn how to swim by trying to swim on dry ground. You have to go in the water. That's how you learn how to swim. And thank you for believing in us, and I'm most grateful to you. Our collective ability to focus on the end, to work as a team, to think outside the box, to be innovative, to be creative, and to deliver, I think is impressive. Some transformational partnerships were also done, and I'm sure we're going to have one very soon. Here you saw at this forum the creation of a new partnership between Tello, South Africa, Madam Zuma, Premier, and the Deutsche Bahn. This partnership will close a $62 billion annual deficit on railways on this continent, and that is impressive to have. We also have, I'm sure we're going to have the Mara phone. You heard Victor talk about it. I'm sure you're going to come up with Ashish Thakkar. This is a phone that is Africa's phone. Africa's first smartphone, not assembled in Africa, manufactured in Africa. By an African investor, Ashish Thakkar, for Africa, in Africa, being exported to the rest of the world. Look, when people started buying cars, who wanted to buy Toyota? Who wanted to buy Hyundai? But today they dominate the world. We are not just going to dominate the world in terms of making more calls on phones. We are also going to dominate the world in producing it, having our own apps, exporting that to the rest of the world, and that is confidence you see in the lion's head over here. We've had excellent and inspirational leadership of African heads of state. When Solomon, where is Solomon? Asamoah. Oh, he's still on stage, yeah. You know, Solomon was our vice president at the bank. And when Solomon is here with his head of state, and he was saying that they were in a boardroom where the president was focused on how to close that transaction, that is a new type of leadership that we are having in Africa. African heads of state working as CEOs of their countries. We've had incredible participation from investors, all of you that are here, 350 of you from 53 countries, 30 African, 23 foreign, from United Arab Emirates, United Kingdom, France, United States, China, Japan, India, Switzerland, Argentina, Austria, Canada, Germany, South Korea, Portugal, Luxembourg, Saudi Arabia, and, of course, Malta. We have had institutional investors. You heard it from my staff that I told you. And the very fact that you have institutional investors from around the world, here the needle is shifting and is pointing in the right direction, pointing towards Africa. I want to say that we have also seen from all across our regions things we don't normally see before. Luxophone countries don't get enough investments. But we had from this particular forum a new compact for development compact for the Luxophone countries, together with Spain, with Portugal, with Brazil, with Cape Verde, with Mozambique, with Guinea-Bissau, Equatorial Guinea, Angola, and Sao Tome and Principe. Together, that's an investment put together of $5 billion for these countries. We also saw a new partnership with the European Union Commission and also with us on the compact with Africa. Your ministers from all across the compact with African countries. What message are we getting? That as our presidents put up the right investments, the right policy, the right regulations, we are beginning to see a lot of success, and I want to thank them for their partnership. I want to say that we also have partners. I stand here on behalf of presidents of the following organizations that are our partners. And as I call them, I'd like them to stand up. They are still here. We're still going to be on the closing panel together. Afri-Exim Bank, Trade and Development Bank, the Africa Finance Corporation, Africa 50, European Investment Bank, Islamic Development Bank, and Development Bank of South Africa. You saw yesterday on the panel, we had all the presidents and vice presidents of all the multilateral finance institutions telling you this is the first time it has ever happened. And we are all here on a platform in a way that we have never done before. And I can go on and on and on. But let me bring this to a close. Let me say that what you see here today is very humbling for me. It's very humbling because my staff, they surpassed my expectations. And you've seen them and you've thanked them. Without them, we wouldn't be here. But I also want to have a different group come up on stage. I would like to have the team from South Africa, those that work with the Premier of Gauteng. Mr. Premier, can you join me on stage, please? Madam Zuma, please come up stage, please. And where all the teams working in the office of the Premier, please come up and where is the chairman? In the booth. Oh, he's here? Ah, okay, all right. He dropped something here. Yeah. Please put your hands together for these guys. The Premier of Gauteng Province is an incredible man. When they bidded for this, he started working right away. He knows business. He put together a first-class team to work with us to make this event happen. Standing on his right, if you come here, can you just introduce yourself and the team, and then I'll say something about you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Mtutu Zimbada. This is our Director General, Mr. Pindile Baleni. You know our Premier, Mr. David Makura. You know our Minister, Mama Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma. The rest of the other team is sitting down there, Mr. President. I don't know why.
Yeah.
Thank you.
The rest of the team that are still sitting down there, can you please come up? Please. The Premier asked me to issue it as a directive, so please give it up to them. Yes, great. Yeah. From Treasury, they are coming from Treasury. Now, Team South Africa, there is one more member of this team that needs to be here. Where is Magoshi, E.D. Magoshi? Magoshi is Executive Director of South Africa at the African Development Bank. Now, I said this because that man that is very humble that just introduced himself, we call him Chairman. Chairman. He is incredible. He made everything work. And I am proud that Africa has somebody like you. Mr. Premier, every leader has to have somebody reliable. He is a very reliable man. My special advisor. He said he's my special advisor. Thank you very much on behalf of the Board of Directors of the African Development Bank. We are most grateful to you, Madam Zuma, most grateful to you, Premier, Madam Director General, Chairman, from Treasury, all the folks that are here, and also to my own dear sister Magoshi, the Executive Director of South Africa at the African Development Bank. Thank you very much. Let me also see if we still have in the hall the governors of the bank, ministers of finance, and the governors of the African Development Bank. If you're still here, can I see, please? Let's thank our governors of the bank for their support for us. Thank you, merci beaucoup. And finally, the most important people in this room, that's you. Please get up and give yourself a big clap. And if you can turn to the person next to you, give them a high five, say, let's do it again. Thank you, and God bless you all.
Hello. No, ladies and gentlemen, please be seated. Time is of the essence, and we do not have much time to segue into our next and final plenary session, which will be led and moderated by my dear colleague from CNN, Eleni Gekos. So once again to our wonderful panelists, we just want to say thank you very much for your time. Congratulations on the deals that are coming to closure. Thank you for being our guests. Wonderful, wonderful time with you. Ladies and gentlemen, can you give them a warm round of applause one more time? Thank you very much. On that note, we are going to make a very quick transition over the next 5 minutes to our closing session. My name, once again, is Victor Ladukun. It's been a wonderful pleasure being with you. Thank you.